of the stuff, and it's probably things that we don't talk about enough. And we need to have a world-class expert in our midst. We're all world-class, of course, but another one amongst us to share some stories. So I'll hand over to Diers.
Thanks, Mano, and thanks so much to you and Beck for organizing this. This has been a fantastic opportunity for me to finally make it to Gisborne. What a fantastic place. In the break between these last two workshops, Meredith took me all over the place. And just, oh my God, you got no better ambassador than her. She's just so passionate about this place, knows all the stories, and it was fantastic. But now I'm totally worn out. You know what I mean. So this morning we started with the workshop with the business community, heart of Gisborne, and that was fantastic. People were just passionate about their place and about the business district. You got a fantastic business district here that's still really intact. You've really done, your elected officials have done right, not creating big malls outside of the city, but focusing the business inside the city where it belongs. And then this morning we did a workshop, a fantastic turnout from people from local government and from NGOs about how NGOs and local government needs to change in order to work to be a better partner with the community. And this session, what I really want to focus on is how the community needs to change in order to be a better partner with local government, to really do things that neither one can do alone. So before I go any further, I'd just like to find out who's in the room. I recognize about half the people, I think, from previous workshops. We'll just go around real quick and just say your name and how you fit in here and what your interest is. Okay?
Evie from the GDC and Community Conservation Artist. I've seen this is my fifth session. I'll get the end today. I've seen 6 sessions with
She's going to present the next one.
Yeah. Every time I get something a little bit different out of it, and what I'm really looking for today is how we can carry on these messages that we get today. How can we carry on with our communities and really make sure there's lasting benefit for it?
That's great. Thanks. Thanks.
Good. I'm Molly from State Parliament and Communities. I was at the same time as the Youth Workshop. Just to say, I'll be going on to 6. This is an alcohol policy.
Okay. Great. Great. Okay. Thank you.
Stephen Donald, family from church and member of the Tonga Bay community.
Great. Thank you.
Lisa Spooner was at the one earlier, parenting place for parenting, so I'm here to get some more information.
Great.
Very much in the parenting place, but also looking to be more involved in the area that I live in.
Yeah, great. That's great.
Me from the Salvation Army, training chaplain, just looking at more ways to connect with my community and
Great.
all
That's great.
sorts of issues.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou, George Brown. I'm from Tairāwhiti Group. We work in the rural community of Te Wānanga.
Great. Great. Thanks. Oh, great. Fantastic. Great.
Hi, I'm Louise Stoltz. I'm District Councillor. I've recently become involved with Aotearoa, and I'm here to get some tools for Aotearoa.
That's great. Dynamite. That's great. That's great.
I'm on behalf of the Aotearoa.
Right.
Amazing.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Kia ora, I'm Fontaine Metzel. I work at the Diers, and it's just starting while working alongside Te Wānanga for
Great.
youth and community.
Great.
Kia ora, Jesse Halbert, just working with youth and wanting to find out where I fit into building a strong community.
That's great. Dynamite. Thanks for being here. That's great.
I'm Karen McHill. I'm involved in the arts in the community, so I'm involved with the band, concert band here, and also the arts and crafts guild.
Great. Great. Thank you.
I'm 83 years. I come from a background in community development and knowledge sharing with Diers, and Diers.
Great.
And currently the family rights responsible for activities that serve and really relation to our community.
Fantastic. Great. Great. Great.
I'm Manu Kaiti, and I actually really as well to know this.
vehicle machine that was missing. But yeah, I'm just, well, because the night for my whole life.
Yeah.
So, and have been, wanting to get involved in the community all my life. So, just looking to contribute.
Fantastic. Great. Thanks for being here.
Te Wānanga. I've just jumped on board with Jason, who's married to Meredith, and just with the anti-bullying project stuff. So
Yeah.
it's really exciting to be on board.
Fantastic. Great.
G'day, Jim. Darren Hart, my name. I'm with Shopping Club. We're basically a business that's founded on building strong economic plans for our communities.
That's great.
So, yeah, it should be really
Great. Great. Thanks. Thanks for coming. Fantastic.
What can I think for?
Yeah, well, I figured there's more to it. Yeah.
So I'm a president on the council of the city board, and I'll chair the community development committee,
Great.
and I'll just kind of reinforce the reasons of it. So
Great. Thank you. What's your name? All right. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Tui and I'm with Aotearoa Trust, and in this community we've done some fantastic things, but there's always opportunity for more.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're right. There's phenomenal stuff going on in this community, and people are really proud of it. It's great. I love this place. Yeah, it's good to meet you. Thanks for coming. All right. Yeah. Well, the movement's growing. This is good. This is great. I love it. Yeah. So, when I first got the notice, I thought I was doing each presentation for about 20 minutes. So last night when I arrived and we were having dinner, they were telling me, well, the workshops are more like 3 hours or 2.5 hours. So I was scrambling last night trying to pull things together. So initially I had very different material for each one. Now I got a little bit of overlap just because I didn't have time to coordinate everything. So please forgive me if there's a couple of stories you've heard, but hopefully it'll be primarily new approaches. And the old stories I'll go through them really fast so I don't bore you. Okay? Okay. So this is the part that's kind of similar, but I think it's really important to cover, which is that I think there's a role for, I'm really clear there's a role for government and there's a role for NGOs, but I think there's no substitute for community when it comes to the things we care most deeply about, right? That when it comes to caring for the earth, caring for one another, preventing crime, responding to disasters, we certainly saw that in Christchurch, promoting health, instilling happiness, creating great places, advancing social justice, and strengthening democracy. There's no substitute for people coming together in community. Absolutely no substitute. The problem is, at the very time we most need our community is probably in its greatest state of crisis. There's a professor at Harvard University who wrote a book called Bowling Alone, and he tracks an incredible breakdown in community life in North America. And as I travel around the world, I see the same forces at work everywhere, where we're starting to create single-purpose places. And it used to be that we'd live, learn, work, and play all in the same place. So we keep bumping into the same people over and over again. It's hard to build a community when we're going to different places for different parts of our life. Increased mobility, again, generation after generation, we live in the same village. And now increasingly we're out on the move. And we're always on the move, it's hard to build those relationships. More time working. Fear in many neighborhoods where people are living behind closed doors, whether or not they have a reason to be afraid. It's that perception. And the more they're behind closed doors and don't know their neighbors, the more fearful they become. Fear of the unknown. Electronic screens. Robert Putnam said the biggest thing breaking down community is television. People say they don't have time for community, yet they spend an average of 3 or 4 hours a day in front of the television set. Globalization, where products and decisions are made further and further away from where we live. And increasing specialization and professionalization, which is something I really tried to push hard this morning, talking about how the very agencies that are trying to help our communities have inadvertently contributed to their breakdown. So, as I said this morning, this is a really depressing message, because I talked about how there's no substitute for community and it's going to hell. And I'm going to further depress you, because I got a story here that kind of summarizes, it kind of tells a story about how I feel community's going. And this is a small house in the Ballard neighborhood. There was a woman who lived in this house who was 85 years old. She'd lived in this house most of her life. A developer owned the property around her and said, I'd like to buy your house so I can put in a large mixed-use development. She said, I'm not selling. The developer said, well, I'll give you $1 million for that house. And her house is worth $150,000. She said, I'm still not selling. My community is worth more to me than $1 million. She was an absolute hero in her neighborhood. How did the developer respond?
Oh my gosh.
Built right around her house. And that's kind of an extreme example, but to me it's a symbol of how so many people experience community these days, where they feel that their neighborhoods aren't being shaped by the residents, but they're being shaped by outside decision makers and outside money. How even in places where there's still a strong sense of community, I think Gisborne still has a pretty good sense of community. There are individuals in Gisborne and every place who don't feel connected, who feel isolated, who feel cut off from community. So I don't want to leave you with that message because I'm a pretty hopeful guy. And I believe people are finding new ways to build community. I think community isn't an old-fashioned concept. I think we need it now more than we've ever needed it. So I want to share some of the lessons I've learned about how to rebuild community. How to really build strong and inclusive community participation. And it's not rocket science. It's really simple stuff. And it's stuff you all know. But it's stuff we tend to forget. Right? So I just want to remind you about what it is that builds community. So remember I said Robert Putnam said the biggest thing breaking down community is television. So I've been stuck in hotel rooms for the last few nights. And every once in a while I turn on the television. I don't even have one at home, but I've been turning it on. And I watch it and I think, man, if this is our competition and we're losing, we're doing something terribly wrong. It shouldn't be that hard for people in television to make community more interesting, more rewarding. And I think the problem is that we have forgotten how to have fun. We've made community work our cross to bear. We've made it drudgery. I got a friend who used to be an organizer in the Philippines, now he's an organizer in Calgary. He says, Jim, the problem getting people involved in community is those GD activists. I said, GD? What are you talking about? He said, the grim and determined. And it cracked me up because it describes so many of the self-proclaimed community leaders I know in Seattle who are always negative, who just like to complain all the time. They're never happy unless they're complaining. Right? And in many ways, they become the gatekeepers. They keep everybody else away because most people gravitate towards hope. It's like, why get involved unless you think you can make a difference? Right? I got another friend who says, why have a meeting when you can have a party? Think about it. The purpose isn't who can endure the most suffering. The purpose is to build relationships. That's what community is all about. And can you build relationships a lot more through fun than you can through meetings? And yet we always resort to meetings as a way to bring people together. So I want to share a few stories about communities that learned how to have fun. First one's from our Fremont neighborhood in Seattle. Glad we've got an arts person here, because I find artists know how to have fun. And arts is an incredible way to build community. So Fremont has lots of artists. And they're always great at public art. So here's one of their public art sculptures, and it's called Waiting for the Interurban, where people have been waiting for the bus for so long, they've turned to stone. And they had a drawbridge coming into Fremont, and in the tower they put Rapunzel with her hair coming down in neon lights. They were really angry at our city government at one point, and rather than just come to council hearings and rather than circulate petitions, they simply erected a rocket on the side of one of their businesses, and they announced that it was aimed at City Hall. They declared themselves the Artists Republic of Fremont and started issuing their own postage stamps. They just had fun with it, but they probably made their point better than any other neighborhood. Then there was an old power station at the elementary school. It wasn't utilized anymore, so they renovated that to make it a place where artists could work with other community members to make wonderful costumes and floats for the annual solstice. You guys should do you're the first that you can see the light, right? Yeah, you should be doing one of these. I love that. I love that idea. Yeah. Well, wait until you see this. Find out what you're volunteering for. So, the parade has wonderful costumes made by community members. When I'm talking about neighborhoods, this is just a scale of 5 or 10,000 people. So Seattle has 600,000 people, but we have over 100 neighborhoods. So when I'm talking about scale, it's more like 5 or 10,000. So wonderful costumes, all made by community members.
What's the date you did?
What's the date?
Right. You're ready to make it happen. Yeah, good. So all kinds of just wonderful floats and costumes. But the parade is led by dozens and dozens of bicycle riders wearing absolutely no costumes at all. Dozens of naked bicyclists. I go through these kind of fast. And not everybody's having fun, but most people are, right? This is another bridge in Fremont. This is where the highway comes in, and underneath is good for nothing except holding up the bridge. So they're having huge public safety problems under there. Drug dealing, there was illegal dumping. And the artist went under there and said, this is kind of cool space. And they started calling it the Hall of Giants. He said it's like a cathedral. It's got this high ceiling, these big columns. They said, we'll put some public art under there. So they had a public art contest. They decided what kind of sculpture they wanted under there. So they submitted a call for artists. Artists submitted different models for what they wanted under the bridge. And then the people got to vote at the Fremont Fair which model to put under the bridge. And what people voted for was a troll. They put a troll under the bridge. That troll is so big that it's a real VW he's got in his claw there. There was some vandalism early on, but the neighbors organized and they formed a troll patrol. They put lighting on the troll, they walk around the troll in the neighborhood, and that making sure the troll in the neighborhood are safe. And now this troll brings people absolutely all over the world. Here's proof. Oh no, this is the first one. So at Halloween, they celebrate Trolloween in Fremont. Yeah, and thousands of people come and howl at the troll and do processions through the streets of Fremont. At Christmas time, all the Santa Clauses gather under the troll. They do Shakespeare on the troll. They just celebrate the 20th birthday of the troll. And this troll now brings people all over the world. Here's proof. Says I'm the money in a troll. So there's always legitimate activity underneath the bridge, right? No public safety problems. And it really is helping with economic development because it brings all kinds of tourists to the business district. Well, this is great. We need more public art in Fremont. We need more sculptures. So they looked around for other sculptures, and with the collapse of the Soviet Union, they got a really good deal on land. The Chamber of Commerce brought land into the town square, where he presides over Taco Del Mar. And sometimes they can give him shades and a guitar. And he's, well, first of all, here he is at the Fremont Fair. But sometimes they give him shades and a guitar, and he's John Lennon. And during the Gay Pride Parade, he's dressing drag. And at Christmas time, they do the annual lighting of Lennon. Very solemn ceremony. Yeah. So they have fun in Fremont. That's what gets people engaged. This is a place of a very different scale. This is where I live now, on Vashon Island, just off of Seattle. It's about a 15-minute ferry ride out of Seattle. Very rural, lots of farms, but we still have a little theater. And at the theater, we celebrate the night of the Oscars. So when the Oscar ceremony's on, the theater owner opens up the theater, and everybody comes. It's a fundraiser for our local schools. And if you pay a little extra money, you pay an extra $10, a limousine picks you up on the backside of the block and drives you around. So you got to make a grand entrance. And the paparazzi's all there taking your photos. You got to walk down the red carpet. And then people strut their stuff going down the runway. And there's prizes for best dressed. And there's prizes for best pajamas. But we have fun at Pretty. Gets people engaged. Yeah. Second, and there's so many other ways to have fun. I was in this Elgin, Illinois. It's a suburb of Chicago. And I saw this big blue wooden tulip in front of somebody's house. And I said, what's with the blue wooden tulip? And they told me a story. They said there's this guy who couldn't help himself. He just collected junk. And his wife would get on his case, and they could take all the junk back to the dump. But every time he came back from the dump, he had more junk than he left with. And he went once, and he found this huge blue wooden tulip. He says, man, that is too good. Like, what a waste. So he brought it back home, he planted it in his front yard, and he told all the neighbors, come over Friday night, I'm having a blue tulip party. People were curious. They never heard of a blue tulip party before, but they were curious, so they came over. They had the best time. There was beer, there was music, there was barbecue. They met all their neighbors. They had so much fun that the next Friday night, that blue tulip showed up in front of somebody else's house. And that blue tulip now has been traveling around the city of Elgin for 15 years. Every Friday night in front of somebody else's house. And all week long, people are walking around trying to figure out, where's that blue tulip going to be this week? It's built community in a way nothing else could have, because it's fun, it's engaging. Okay. Second lesson I learned about getting people engaged, and this is right out of community organizing, is if you want to get people engaged, you need to start where they're at. So oftentimes we're trying to get people to come to us, to our city hall gatherings or whatever. If we really want to get people involved, we need to start where they're at. And the closer you involve people to where they live, the more likely they are to get engaged. Right? So you may get more people out citywide here than you would in a neighborhood. You may get more people out in a neighborhood than you would in a particular street. You're never going to get as high a percentage of participation if you involve people right on their own street. Right? Because that's when people already have some relationships. People are going to say, look, if I don't take care of that, who's going to do it? Right? If it's citywide, people are going to say, oh, somebody, mine will take care of that. Somebody else will take care of it. Right? I don't have to be there. And it makes it easier for transportation, childcare, so that the closer you involve people where they live, the more likely they are to get engaged. Second thing is to be cognizant and start with their language and culture. Even if everybody in the community is speaking English, though, we need to be clear we're speaking the same English that they're speaking. And increasingly, we use our professionalized, specialized language. We use really fancy terms like asset-based community development to mean something really simple, which is just build on your strengths. And if people don't know what we're talking about, they don't get engaged. They don't think they have enough expertise. And to focus on their culture. When I was doing community organizing, I was organizing in a very multicultural community. There was a large Jewish community there. It took me a while to figure out why they weren't showing up for our annual meetings on Saturday. Right? Third, focus on their networks. Start with their networks. So oftentimes we're trying to get people to join our group. We think we're the only show in town. And we forget that just about everybody's already organized. And they only have so much time in their lives. They don't have time to join yet another group. And their relationships tend to be within their existing group. So if we really want to get broad, inclusive engagement, we need to recognize all the other ways people are organized in faith-based groups, school-based groups, neighborhood watch groups, sporting groups, senior groups, youth groups, social service organizations, right? Hobby clubs, book clubs. There are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of associations here in Gisborne, both formal and informal. So if you really want to get everybody engaged, you need to reach out to all those different networks. And our networks tend to be one kind of people, right? Most of our ratepayers associations, at least in Seattle, tend to be whiter and more middle class and more homeowners than the neighborhood as a whole. Try to be inclusive, right? They try to reach out, but the language has already been set. The leadership is set, the agenda is set, the relationships are set, so people who are different don't feel that welcome coming in. So if we really want to build broad inclusive engagement, we need to figure out who's not adequately represented in our community work and what network are they a part of. Find out what their network cares about and look for ways to start working together, collaborate across different networks. When I was doing community organizing, I was trying to organize a resident association. Because I was working in a low-income neighborhood, I thought they needed a better voice with city council. And so I went house to house trying to organize and bring people together around issues. I had a lot of success, but it was a lot of work. And I finally woke up to the fact that everybody was already organized. And I realized in my neighborhood, most people belonged to faith-based groups. Now it turned out most of those faith-based groups were very segregated. There was the African-American Baptists over here. There were the German Lutherans over here. There was the Jewish synagogue over here. There was the Buddhist temple over there. There was the Japanese Methodist church over here. There was the mosque over here. That's right. But we recognized that we could bring them all, we brought them all together. And when we had them all together, we had the full rainbow of the community. Something that we never could have achieved one group at a time. Okay? And then the fourth lesson I learned is to start with people's passions. That too oftentimes we're starting with what we're passionate about. Or what we get paid to be passionate about. Or what we got a grant to be passionate about. And then when nobody joins us, we say, boy, people are apathetic. Right? Nobody is apathetic. Everybody cares deeply about something. So if you really want to get people engaged, it's much better to start with a question than with an answer. What keeps you awake at night? What are your dreams for your family, for your community? Because if you can tap into what people care deeply about and give them a sense they can do something about it, they're much more likely to get engaged if you spend a lot of time trying to convince them to care about what you care about. Okay? And then the fifth lesson I learned is to start with their call. And I learned this from a friend who's a duck hunter. And my duck hunting friend taught me that every duck will respond to a call. They're just a different call for every duck. Right? So there's one for your paradise ducks. I just saw one the other day. Beautiful duck. There's one for the mallards. There's one for the mergansers. There's one for the loons. There's one for the coots. There's one for whatever kind of ducks you got here in New Zealand. Right? Every duck has its own call. But my friend says too oftentimes in our outreach we just sound the loon call. And we wonder why only loons show up at our meetings. Since in fact everybody will come, we just need to sound their call. And too oftentimes the only call we use is the meeting call. I didn't say the meeting call would be kind of interesting, right? But for a lot of people, the meeting call is the worst call in the world. They know they come to that first meeting, they're going to be the sign-in sheet and sentence the meetings for the rest of their life. And a lot of people don't see results from meetings. One meeting just leads to another meeting. Nothing ever changes. So if we really want to get everybody engaged, we need to use the full range of calls. The social call, we know that works. Food, music, brings people together, builds relationships. I love the project call because with projects, unlike meetings, there's always a result. Short-term commitment. There's a role for everybody, for young people and elders, people with disabilities, everybody. And in the process, people build relationships. And once people build relationships, then they're more likely to come to some meetings. Because you need a few meetings as well. But we always lead with the meetings and wonder why the same people keep showing up. We try to engage community before we build community. So here's an example from Darwin, England, where they've done a fantastic job of starting where the people are. So Darwin is a community about 50,000 people. It's in a rural area, lower income, and they're trying to figure out how to get more people engaged. So they came up with a fantastic idea. They bought some cheap living room furniture at IKEA, just enough to fit in the back of a van. And then they take it out to really public places and set it up. So they set it up at the mall on a Saturday night. They set it up at the sporting field on a Friday night. They take it to the church on Sunday morning, set it up in front of the church. And it just looks weird, right? So it attracts people. They come over. There's a coffee table. There's a stuffed cat. There's a vase of flowers. And there's an idea sofa. And the people come over. They're curious. And they're invited to sit down and share their idea for what would make for a better Darwin. So it attracts people who would never come to the meetings. People who are just out there. And everybody's got ideas, right? So here people are sharing their ideas. And everybody who has an idea is invited to come to the school on a Saturday for a workshop. And at the workshop, they develop their idea into a proposal. And at the end of the workshop, they pitch their idea to everybody else in the community. And then people vote which projects they're going to support with up to £1,000 at their time. In this small community, 37 projects have happened in the first 6 months. By people who never would have gotten involved otherwise. So these women came together to form a soldier support group and working to clean up the cemetery. These young people created a conservation group, an environmental group. Neighbors came together to clean up the local estate and plant daffodils everywhere. Worked with the kids to build a skate park. Organized the Scarecrow Festival. I love the Scarecrow. So just a real, and there's no application form, there's no contract. People just come and make their proposal. The only requirement is to come back in 6 months and share their story. Making it really easy to attract people who would never, ever think about applying for a grant. Third lesson is what's important. To start where people are, you don't want to leave them there. People need to see results. People are feeling so powerless these days. When I was doing community organizing, I was knocking on people's doors, trying to get people engaged, looking for issues I could organize people around. So I'd say, are there any problems in the neighborhood? People would say, why? You can't fight City Hall. Right? Or I knock on the door and say, are there any problems in the neighborhood? They'd say, why? Are you a lawyer? And the implication was that only lawyers and politicians have any power in our society, which is a pretty sad indictment of a democracy. So we tried to give people a sense that they could have power, that they could make change by working together, that through collective action they could make a difference. So for people who are feeling powerless, you probably don't want to start by bringing them together around issues like world peace. Because it's kind of hard to see progress sometimes. Or climate change. It's kind of hard to see progress sometimes. Doesn't mean we shouldn't work on world peace and climate change. But people are never going to work on the big stuff if they don't think they even have the power to make change on their own street. So the idea is to think big, but start small. Get people involved in small projects where they can see results, and small issues where they can see that their participation makes a difference. And once people get the sense of the power of collective action, then they're more likely to work on the big stuff. And then the fourth lesson I learned is don't sit on your assets. Yeah. And the point here is that absolutely everybody, without exception, everybody has gifts to give to our community. Everybody. I like to think about them as three kinds of gifts. One are gifts of the head, that person's knowledge. Another is gifts of the heart, that person's passions. And another is gifts of the hands, that person's skills. Absolutely everybody's got these. To prove it, what I'd like you to do is interview somebody else in the room for 3 minutes to find out what their gifts are. And then have that person interview you for 3 minutes to find out what your gifts are. And I know people in New Zealand are really modest. You don't like to brag about your gifts, but just do it for me, okay? Okay? 3 minutes, and again, your knowledge, what you're passionate about, and what your skills are. And particularly listen for gifts that may not be related to that person's job. Take your work hat off. We're all community members. Right? And think about gifts that may not be readily visible. Okay? So let's spend 6 minutes, 3 minutes going each way. And you might want to connect with somebody you don't know at all. Good chance to meet somebody new. Okay? Okay, everybody. I love the buzz in the room. It's great. It's hard to get people. Take a little while to get warmed up, and once you get started, it's hard to get people to be quiet. It's great. People love talking about their gifts. Just think how it would have been different if I'd asked you to interview each other about your deficiencies, right? It would have been more subdued. And yet, that's often what we do when we're trying to help people, right? We're focusing on what they're missing, on what their problem is. And it leads to a very different kind of conversation and a very different kind of power relationship. When we've got all the power and the person has nothing but deficiencies. I'd love to give you some examples of some of the gifts Jen covered. So what are some examples? Great.
Okay, well, between the three of us, we're basically all service people. We love to serve others, but also we're managers. So like we were talking, we actually live in an L shape just down the road here in Elgin. And we've come here tonight basically to gather more information so that we can do something in our area, which is really exciting for us because we've been waiting for something like this to happen. Excuse me, I'm getting emotional now. And even just realised that we're at Orange Grove and there's a piece of glass there that sits in front of Orange Grove and does nothing all the time, you know? And it's like, actually, what can we do with it? So for us, it's really exciting to think that we can listen to Jim and just grow within ourselves.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's great. That's great. What are some other examples of gifts Jen covered?
We just figured that Anne and I were very similar.
Great. Fantastic. That's great. That's great. What else?
Mine was synchronized swimming and knitting.
Synchronized swimming? Really? And what else? Fantastic. That's great.
He's written it down, I
Do you want to grill the other group?
Jason's a great hunter gatherer actually. He does it for his family and for other people, so he has an intimate knowledge of where all the free food is in the community.
That's fantastic. This is great. It's great. What else? That's great.
We just touched on something at the end where, I mean, a lot of our gift is actually being parents because it's for our children. That's our big driver.
Yeah, that's great.
We actually get to a stage where we want this community to really get up and grow for our kids. So as a driver, that's huge.
That's great. And it's also your passion, kids. I mean, I think for a lot of people, that is their main passion. They don't care about anything else. They're going to care about the kids. So involving people in their schools, with their kids, great way. I often say, if you get kids involved, other people will get involved. Right? That's great. What else?
I'm with Karen, and she has a wide range of skills in terms of science and biology and coordinating events.
Great.
She's a musician, musicianship, committee work, and she also talked about family.
Great.
And obviously passionate about family as well.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great. What else do we have?
I'd like to introduce Kahu, who's turning 15 tomorrow.
So we could go on all day. So, I mean, really, we just touched the tip of the iceberg here. But what I'd like you to think about is how all these gifts can be used to build community. That oftentimes in our community work, we're thinking very narrowly about what we need. We're just thinking about who's a good talker, and we forget about the good listener. It's absolutely critical. More important than the talker. Right? Or we're looking for the good grant writer. We're forgetting about the great drawer. Right? Right? How we can use music, and event coordinator to do really great stuff. But how knitting can be a fantastic tool to build communities. Yeah, knit things together. But I know in a lot of places they're doing guerrilla knitting. They do like knitting, as a community activity. It's a fantastic way to build community. It really is. Sports, great way to build community, right? Just and people's passion for kids and for community, and the hunter-gatherer. Yeah. just thinking about how you can do really great community work with all these gifts. Do you know the story of stone soup?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, I'll tell a quick version. So it's right after the war. Soldiers coming through the countryside, and they're really hungry. And they get to this little village, and they ask the villagers, do you have some food you can spare? Because we're really hungry. And the villagers hoarded what little food they have because it's a time of shortage. So the soldiers say, that's okay. If somebody has a kettle, we'll make stone. We have a magic stone, we'll make stone soup. So the villager brings a kettle. They put the stone in, they add water, they put it on the fire. They start to cook it. They said, the soup is going to be absolutely delicious. But it'd be even better if somebody had a few herbs. So the villager brought a few herbs. It'd be even better if somebody just had a leek. So somebody brings a leek. It'd be even better if somebody had a few scraps of meat. So they contact the hunter-gatherer and put in a few scraps of meat. And when that soup was done and they ate it, oh my God, they never tasted such delicious soup before. And they marveled at the magic of that stone. But of course, the moral of the story is the magic wasn't in the stone. The magic is in community. That is the meaning of community. There's an old Maori proverb that says, with my gifts, with your gifts, my gifts, the people will be well. That's what community is all about. Is recognizing that everybody has gifts to share. And everybody has needs to be met. And community is about helping everybody with their needs by sharing everybody's gifts. That's the meaning of community. It's all about gift giving. The problem is oftentimes our gifts get buried under our labels. So some people here would be labeled as politicians. When you think about politicians, you think about a wide range of gifts. Usually not. Some people here would be labeled as activists. When you think about activists, you think about a wide range of gifts? No. Some people here would be labeled as bureaucrats. And if you think about bureaucrats, you think about a wide range of gifts? No. You think pretty narrowly. I can't tell you how many times I've done this exercise, and people have been working next to each other in cubicles for 30 years, learn more in 3 minutes about each other than they've learned in 30 years. Because oftentimes in the workplace, we just see the person in terms of their job description. We aren't bringing all of our gifts to the workplace. Just think how much richer our work would be if we brought all of our gifts. Right? We did synchronized swimming during council session. Right? So, but the problem is, he's going to be. So the problem in our society is that there are labels we put on huge sections of our community that are even more limiting than the label of bureaucrat. We now label most people in our community not by their gifts, but by what they're missing. So what are some labels we put on huge sections of our community that label people by their deficiencies? Low socioeconomic. We define people by what they don't have, money. Right? Estate housing. What else?
Unemployment.
Unemployed. We define people by what they don't have a job. How are they ever going to get a job? We just focus on what they don't have.
Geriatric.
Oh, yeah, I get increasingly sensitive to that every year. I get more and more sensitive. We did a process week in Seattle, called Asian Your Way. And we had older people come to the session. And what number one thing we heard from them is we want the opportunity to contribute. That now we're just valued for our needs. We're just seen as a bunch of clients. We spent a whole lifetime getting skills and experience and knowledge. And that's not valued. What are some other labels? Oh, God. Disabled. I really hate that one. And we're discovering more disabilities all the time. More and more people falling under that label. How many people in this room have no disability? I see some people with eyeglasses. My disability is my memory. It gets worse every year. Right? But I don't say I have this disability. Please hire me. I try to get some gifts I have. And yet there's a huge section of our population that we define and think of solely in terms of their disability. And then we wonder why they aren't active in our community. We've written them out. When we focus on people's needs, they become clients in the service system. When we focus on people's gifts, they become citizens in our community. And I'm not dismissing that people have needs, that they require some services. Everybody in this room has some needs. Everybody in this room requires some services. But I think most people in this room would be identified by your gifts. Most people outside this room would be identified by their needs. And then we wonder why those people aren't involved in our community. We define them out. What are some other labels? Street kids. My country, we hardly ever talk about young people anymore without that adjective at risk. We've defined young people as a problem. And there's some truth to every one of these labels. You know, young people have some problems, we all do. But it's only part of the truth. Who's got more energy than young people? Who's got more at stake in the future of our community than young people? Who's got more creativity than young people? Who are the experts on young people more than young people? And yet we sit around and talk about the youth problem. We don't have a youth problem, we have a community problem. Where we aren't building on the gifts of young people. What are some other labels? Easy, good, yeah. What else?
Beneficiary.
Beneficiary. What else?
Disenfranchised.
Yeah, disenfranchised. There's all kinds of homeless. We define people by what they don't have a home. I got a friend who's a minister in a church in Cincinnati, Ohio. And the members of his church have a soup kitchen they operate in the basement. They serve homeless men food. Finally, someone got the idea and says, why don't we interview these men and find out what their gift is? Turned out, a bunch of these men like to cook. So they said, would you like to help cook the meals in the soup kitchen? They were overjoyed. Nobody ever thought to ask them that before. After a while, the homeless man and members of the church are cooking and eating together. And it was kind of hard to tell who were the providers and who were the clients. Because it wasn't about services anymore. It was about community. In community, we recognize everybody's got needs and everybody's got gifts. It's about supporting each other. Mutual support.
Also, and then it's not everybody, but marriage.
Yeah. Another one we talk often about is our new immigrants and refugees. We refer to them as non-English speaking. I swear most of them know multiple languages, and we define them by the one language they don't know.
English is the secret language.
Yeah, right.
That's probably
Right, and what an incredible resource they can be in terms of community outreach. They know so many different languages. We limit ourselves so much with labels on community. So one of the incredible ways we can get more people involved in communities is by lifting those labels off and focusing on the gifts that absolutely everybody has. People are eager to give their gifts. We just need to ask people. We need to lift off those labels. I want to share a story. In Seattle, this is how ridiculous it is to look at the half-empty part of the glass all the time. I want to share a story from Seattle. As I said, our resident associations tend to be more homeowners, more middle class, more middle-aged than the neighborhood as a whole. So we're trying to help our neighborhood associations think about how they can be so much more effective if they can become inclusive. So we tried to think about who's most excluded, who's most disenfranchised in our neighborhoods. That are probably the people with developmental disabilities. People who've been institutionalized for years outside of our cities were being increasingly deinstitutionalized, living in our neighborhoods, living in group homes, living with family members in our neighborhoods, but not in our community. So we started up a program called Involving All Neighbors, and we put together what we call the Action and Community Team. And it was made up of individuals with developmental disabilities and their family members who wanted to become more engaged. And it also involved neighborhood activists who wanted to create more inclusive organizations. So we worked with both ends to help involve people around their gifts. So I want to share a few stories. First one's Matt. Matt, his mom came to see me, and Matt says, I've been living in the Ravenna neighborhood for 8 years. I don't know anybody. I said, Matt, what do you like about your neighborhood? He said, it took me to Ravenna Creek. He said, I love the creek. I knew the neighborhood association was working hard to clean up the creek to make a better salmon habitat. So I talked to Thomas, who was head of the neighborhood association. Thomas, did you involve Matt in the project? He said, yeah, we can always use more volunteers. So they trained Matt how to remove the invasive howling and how to reinforce with native plants. And it wasn't long before Matt became the volunteer leader. And he was teaching everybody else how to remove the invasive plants and how to reinforce with native plants. But Matt's greatest gift, he's got this incredibly infectious personality. So he comes in, he knocks on your door, he says, hi, I'm Matt. I really care about the salmon, don't you? You'll help me, won't you? You can't say no to the guy. He is the #1 volunteer recruiter in the neighborhood. He's got armies of people cleaning out the invasive hollies. And he's really creative. At Christmas time, he organizes a holly day party. And all the neighbors go and collect that invasive holly, they make Christmas decorations, and everybody comes back to Matt's house afterwards for a big party. And Matt is totally socially uninhibited. He's always the first one out on the dance floor. He helps everybody else break out of their shells. That's his gift. He builds a community like nobody else. This is Susan on the right-hand side. She's chair of the neighborhood association in Delridge. She wanted to create a more inclusive organization. So she worked with our Department of Social and Health Services, and she said, could you send letters out to your clients? And basically the letter said, hi, I'm Susan, I'm chair of the neighborhood association. We'd love to get you involved. If you're interested, give me a call. So she got a call from Raymond and Ginger. She went to their house. They said, we've been living here for 20 years. We don't know any of our neighbors. She looked around the walls and inside the house, and there are all these crafts. And some of them had clown themes. And she said, what's with this? They said, that's how we spend our time. We spend our time making crafts. And Raymond here used to be Rayco the Clown. But he hasn't clowned in over 20 years. Susan said, we're having our Delridge Community Festival on Saturday. Could you come and clown for us? He was so excited. He and Ginger dug through his old boxes, finally found his clown outfit, and Susan came and picked him up on Saturday. He was the hit of the festival. The kids loved him. They started inviting him to kids' birthday parties, to other community events. And in the process, he and Ginger met other people who did craft work. They started taking him to craft shows, so they finally had transportation. Susan said that they opened doors for her in the neighborhood like nobody else had been able to. And finally, this is the story of Larry. Larry, as you can see, has a disability that makes him totally dependent on public transit. So Larry knows the bus system better than anybody else in this Capitol Hill neighborhood. He knows all the places the bus goes. He knows all the places the bus should go, if it doesn't go. He knows all the places where there should be covered bus shelters, where there should be better security lighting. So when the neighborhood did their neighborhood plan, they tapped Larry to help with the transportation element. And Larry led a walking tour of the business district, and he pointed out all of the access problems, because they weren't just a problem for Larry, they're a problem for parents with their strollers, elders with their walkers. Larry became so highly valued that he was elected vice chair of the Capitol Hill Community Council. Somebody with developmental disability, somebody who's been seen as a person with nothing but needs, is now a leader in his community because people thought to lift off that way and focus on his gifts. incredible untapped potential in our communities. Well, in the same way that we've labeled individuals, we've labeled whole neighborhoods, whole places, the hood. And we tend to label them by their needs rather than by their strengths. This is the typical map that we've created of the places where we live. And this is a map that's generally created by the agencies that are trying to help our communities. We often say that agencies need needs. And it's good we've got local government and nonprofits because there's some things communities don't do so well. Right? And so oftentimes their desire to help communities, the first thing an agency does is do a needs assessment to figure out what are all the problems, how can we be most helpful. Very legitimate exercise. But the problem is they often stop there and then forget about this map of our same place. All the strengths that are in our community. It's the other half of the class. So when I was doing community organizing, this was my map of the neighborhood I was working in. Because we all know it's easy to organize people around a crisis. So I was always looking for the problems. And if there wasn't a crisis in the neighborhood, I was pretty depressed. I was pretty sick. Because I didn't know how else to bring people together. My colleague John McKnight was another community organizer. He used to organize in Chicago. And this was his map of the neighborhoods he was organizing in. He said at one point they made their list of demands, they went down to City Hall to make their demands, found out City Hall was out of money. He says then we marched to the corporate headquarters and found out they moved to Japan. He said the old ways aren't working, where we're just focusing on what's missing in our community, and we're always looking outside our community for the solutions. I've got to figure out a new way of organizing. And his idea became, instead of organizing people around what they don't have, how about if we organize people around what they do have? And he called it asset-based community development. And started up the Asset-Based Community Development Institute at Northwestern University in Chicago. And the first thing he and his colleague, Jody Crespi, did was survey 300 communities across North America, both urban and rural. And they found that the communities that were the most successful with their community development efforts were the ones that started not with this map, but with this map. So why do you think this might be the more successful place to start with community development work? Strength-based. Why? Why would that be one?
Oh my gosh, it's big.
I was looking at what is there, the possibilities, what is there.
Yeah. So let's look at the possibilities. It's a much more optimistic map. It gives you a sense of hope. And as I said before, some people gravitate towards negativity, but most people get involved because they think they can make change. This is the basis for getting a lot more people engaged because it's hopeful. You're building what you got. Why else might this be more powerful?
It's showing some networks that are already formed.
Yeah, that's great. So you're showing all the networks, how everything is connected. The other map is created by agencies. Everything's in a silo because that's the way agencies are organized. It's a community that everything comes together. People belong to multiple associations, so everything's very networked. What else?
Resources, that's what I'd love to work with.
Yeah, that's great. So it's not like we don't need the resources of local government and the foundations and all this, but now we've got tons more resources. We've got a lot more resources to get our work done. What else?
That shows the diversity.
That's great, yeah. You can see everybody in this map. You can't see yourself in the other one. What else?
It's looking solely on the positives, not the negatives.
Yeah, focuses on the positives, not the negatives, right? What else? I would argue that this is the key to community empowerment. With the other map, people say, I can't do a thing until I get that grant. I can't do a thing until I get a sympathetic elected official. Right? With this map, you don't have to wait. You can just act because you're moving what you already have. And I would also argue this is the key to sustainability. With the other map, when the grant runs out, what happens? The initiative stops. How many times have you seen that happen? Or when the sympathetic elected official gets voted out of office, it stops. Or when the sympathetic elected official is no longer sympathetic, it stops. Or when council runs out of money, it stops. And I'd also argue that this is the key to much more appropriate development, because you're building on what's special about your place, about your values, your culture, the physical character of the place. And when solutions come from the outside, they tend to be one size fits all. And because everything's connected here, you get much more holistic solutions, rather than the kind of siloed solutions that come out of agencies. So this is really powerful stuff, really powerful. So quickly, I'd just like to talk about the strengths that are in absolutely every community. Talk a little bit about the gifts of individuals. I'd like to share a couple more examples. This is in our Soto neighborhood in Seattle. And this is our industrial and warehouse area just south of downtown. And I wish I had the before picture because the backs of these warehouses were covered with graffiti. And this is the gateway into the neighborhood. It's the first view that tourists and commuters get of Seattle each day. This is how our light rail comes into Seattle. It looked terrible. And my parents were here working in the local factory. He was sick of this image of his neighborhood. But he had a great idea. He says, why don't we see the backs of the warehouses as potential canvases for murals? Called the Urban Art Corridor. But he had an even better idea. He worked with our court system. He asked the judges, could you offer the kids who get busted for graffiti an alternative sentence where they could come and help us to create the murals? So young people create every one of these murals. And we found that as long as the kids were involved in this program, not one of them reoffended. And now, more than 5,000 young people have been involved in creating more than 1,500 murals, including these that are painted on plywood, and they're used to beautify construction sites around the cities. The developers pay for the murals, and it keeps the program sustainable over time. Building on the gifts of young people, people who are great drawers. This is the other end of the spectrum. This is a story from Adelaide. And I learned this story from Barb. Barb's a social worker. She told me a story about Colleen. Colleen was an older woman who was totally depressed. And depressed for good reason, because she lost her husband, and her best friend, and her dog. There was nobody left in her life that she felt deeply about, or who she thought cared deeply about her. So she just gave it up. She was just laying in her bed. Barb came to see her one day and saw this knitted by the side of her bed. He said, what's that? She said, that's a tea cozy. I made it years ago. Barb said, that's pretty cool. She knew there was a new upscale tea shop going in Adelaide, so she talked to the owners. Said, do you think you could sell some of these tea cozies? They said, yeah, we've been looking all over for good tea cozies. Yeah, we can sell them. So she went back and told Colleen. Colleen got a little bit excited. Colleen started knitting and making more and more tea cozies. She couldn't keep up with demand. They just started flying off the shelf in this tea shop. So Colleen reached out to other older women who were in her same situation. And she taught them how to make tea cozies. They formed a cozy club. And they really didn't need the proceeds from these tea cozies, the sales. So they used all the proceeds to support an association of women with acquired brain injuries. And then they started involving these women in the cozy club. And they made more and more tea cozies.
Wow.
But they also made these wonderful fabric wall hangings, like this one showing a winery right outside of Adelaide. And now these women feel incredibly empowered. They're in Queen Victoria Square right in the center of Adelaide. They want to create a gigantic gathering place. And they want to have it in the shape of a gigantic teapot. And they have a project called Imagine Adelaide to cover that teapot with a gigantic tea cozy. Incredible power to lift off those labels and focus on everybody's gifts. So I'd like you just have a quick conversation with your neighbors about who are the labeled people in your community? Who are the people who are on the margins of community life, who aren't being engaged because we focus too much on their needs and not enough on their gifts? Who is it that we need to bring back into our community work? Where are those underutilized resources? So let's just take 5 minutes and have a quick discussion about who are we missing out on? Whose gifts are we missing? Okay? Sorry, we're not set up really well for a long conversation. Let's just take 5 minutes. So second strength is in every community are the community associations, the voluntary associations. And as I said before, I talked about networks. There are just hundreds of them in your community. So I like to distinguish associations from agencies. Agencies tend to be top-down. They tend to be driven largely by staff and budgets. But communities are driven, are just people come together do collectively what they can't do individually. Open membership, democratic. So what would be some examples of associations, both formal and informal, here in Gisborne?
Sports clubs.
I'm sorry, sports clubs? Fantastic. Fantastic. There's a lot of them. And there's youth groups. What else? What else? What other kinds of groups? Women's groups, great.
Cultural groups,
Yeah, great. What else?
so like groups with the elderly, like the Sunshine Service.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. What else? Youth groups. What else? Community groups. What kind? Oh yeah, just really informal. People come together and drink beer together and drink coffee together and just hang out.
Talk about things in the
Yeah, okay, great. That's great. Okay, great. Like resident associations and very informal groups at the block level. Oh, fantastic. That's great. Fantastic. That's great. Yeah, I love that story. That was great. What else? Faith-based. And often within like a church, there's multiple groups. There's often a men's group and a women's group and a youth group and a choir. All kinds of associations. What else?
Different concert band.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah.
We had a beginning band, intermediate, and we had the dance band.
That's great. That's great. Do you guys have like Lions and Rotary and Elks and all those? Right? Do you have neighborhood watches? I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds, and there's also the informal associations. So if you really want to get broad and inclusive engagements, but recognizing all those different ways people are already organized. You don't have to organize them yourself, one person at a time. They already have the relationships, they already have the networks. Find out what they care about, get them engaged. I want to share a story about the power of working through those associations. So I'm going to share this story because it also illustrates a process I want to use later in this workshop. Okay? So this is in my neighborhood of Columbia City. Columbia City is a neighborhood of about 5,000 people. We've got a business district at the center. It was declared an historic district in the 1970s to preserve the 1- and 2-story brick facades. That's when I moved into the neighborhood. I moved in 1976. And soon after I moved in, the neighborhood started to go downhill. And I like to think it wasn't just because of me. That it was because of the big box retail, that it was because of the mall that got built outside the city. But more and more businesses, same thing is happening in Main Street in so many places, that more and more businesses started leaving our business district. We lost both of our clothing stores, we lost our pharmacy, we lost our hardware store, we lost our furniture store. As more and more stores became left and became boarded up, more and more crime moved into the business district. We got prostitution, drug dealing, gang activity. As we got more and more crime, most of the rest of the businesses moved out. We finally lost our theater, and we lost our supermarket. By 1995, we had hardly any businesses left in Columbia City. All the storefronts were boarded up. We actually had more business going on outside the stores than inside. So we had a neighborhood association. We said, we got to do something about this, but we don't have enough members. So we tried to think, what are the other associations in the community that might share our concern? And there was an African American Baptist church a block away. They were interested. We talked to the minister. German Lutheran church a couple blocks in the other direction. They were interested. There was a school right in the middle of that business district, and we talked to the Heaven Parent Teacher Association. They were very concerned about the crime. They said, we'll get involved. There was an historical association. They said, we'll get involved. So we brought the leaders of all those associations together, and together we planned a town meeting. And we had a huge turnout for the town meeting because we worked through all the networks, through the existing relationships. Something that we never would have gotten if we just put a notice in the paper. Right? We used relationships. And the other reason we got a big turnout was we used the oldest trick in the world. We said, we'll give you free breakfast if you come to our town meeting. You just got to spend the whole morning. So we had it at the largest space we could find, which is the Filipino restaurant on Rainier Avenue. And we told everybody, come with an idea for a project that will make Columbia City a better place. And everybody who had an idea got a minute or two to present their idea to the whole room. And then we wrote it up on paper in front of the room. And then we told people, vote with your feet. Go where your passion is. None of these ideas are going to happen unless you take responsibility for them. So everybody who likes this first idea, follow the person who suggested it. Right now, go over to the Columbus City Library, start working on it. You got the rest of the morning. If you like this idea, go to the Baptist Church, start working on it. You got the rest of the morning. If you like this idea, go over to the Thai restaurant, start working on it. Go where your passion is. If you don't like what's going on in that session, go to a different one. If you don't like what's going on there, go home, watch television. Should be fun. Amazingly, so many projects happened out of that first town meeting that we came back the next year to celebrate these projects. And we kicked off another round. We've now been doing this for 15 years. And I want to show you some of what happened. The power of working through those different associations. There was an artist came to that first town meeting and said, we've got a block-long blank wall. It's a dairy plant coming. It's a gateway into the neighborhood. It's covered with graffiti. It says a really negative statement about our community. He said, I'll create a mural if everybody will help me paint it. So we had dozens of people on the scaffold and painting what we love about our neighborhood is multicultural heritage. Somebody said, we're never going to get businesses into the business district unless we make it look better. It looks terrible. There's garbage everywhere. There's graffiti. He says, I work for the Port of Seattle. We can donate a shipping container. We paint a mural on the outside. We'll fill it up with cleaning equipment. And on the weekend, volunteers came out to clean up the business district. Somebody said, we've got a Christian Science church. It's been boarded up and closed for years. Let's renovate that and make it a multicultural center, surround our young people with the arts. Now, on weekends, there are all kinds of performances. And when people come in for the performance to watch their kids, they shop at the local retail. They go to the local restaurants. Somebody said, we still have a few restaurants left, but they're afraid to open up at night. All they do is serve lunch because they're afraid of the crime at night. Let's get people a reason to come out en masse on a Friday night. So the idea was, let's get different ethnic music in each restaurant. People can walk from restaurant to restaurant and listen to music. We called the idea Beat Walk. Had a hard time talking the business owners into this idea because they hadn't had a good experience at night, but they finally agreed. And the first Beat Walk, the streets were lined with legitimate activity. People were so excited. The business owner said, begged and said, can we do this again next month? We've now been doing it for 15 years. The number of venues just keeps growing. Talk about how we lost our supermarket. Somebody said, let's do that as an opportunity. We get that huge parking lot. Let's start a farmer's market. Volunteers organize the farmer's market. Now we get 2,500 people out Wednesday nights from the farmer's market. People come to shop in the local business district. Here are kids from the elementary school selling their plant starts at the farmer's market. Local artists created all these kiosks to showcase all the events as well as panels showing the historic buildings. I wish I had the before picture of this. This was the most run-down storefront in the whole business district. Somebody said, maybe if we fix that up, we'll get the other business owners to fix theirs up. Somebody said, that won't do any good unless we get a business inside. Somebody else said, how about a non-profit? Somebody said, how about a bike store? Because there's none in Southeast Seattle. Somebody else said, how about a non-profit bike store? So they got people to donate. First of all, volunteers renovated this building. It's the Seattle Bike Works. They got people to donate their used bicycles that hadn't worked for years. And they teach at-risk youth how to fix the bicycles. And every kid who graduates from the program gets his or her own bicycle. They formed a bicycle club. They do regular bike rides around the neighborhood. The older kids do the Seattle Portland bike ride. They do an annual bike swap, so as the kids grow, they can swap for larger bicycles. They've now fixed so many bicycles that hundreds of kids have earned their own. They donate bicycles to foster kids, to homeless families. They're sending 500 bicycles a year to the people of Africa. This is out of a neighborhood that was seen as a place with nothing but needs. Well, despite all of these projects, there were so many more. There was one block in this historic district we couldn't get any businesses to come into. We kept trying to market it, nobody would touch it. Finally said, look, if we can't get real businesses, let's pretend. They said, what kind of business would you like? Somebody said, I want an ice cream store. So they painted the door, boarded up doors and windows to make it look like there was an ice cream store. Somebody said, but I want a hat shop, and I want a dance studio, and I want a bookstore, and I want a toy store. So they painted that entire block to make it look like there were businesses. People got excited. Cars were stopping. People wanted to get out and shop. Within a year, we had to take down every one of the murals because real businesses wanted to get on the action. This is what it looked like 1 year later with the Italian deli, with the brew pub, with the co-op art gallery that also came out of a town meeting. You go to Columbus City today, there's not one empty storefront. They're building new mixed-use development to keep up with demand. And everything that happened here built on those networks. Building on the community's ideas, the community these resources. Incredible untapped potential in our communities. What I'd like to do in a few minutes is do a similar process here and have people say, here's a topic I really care about. I want to do something in my neighborhood, for example. You guys might want to do a project in your neighborhood. And say, I want to think about how I can apply these principles and how we can use some of the underutilized resources to do something really cool in my neighborhood. Or there are other people who are passionate about young people or about seniors and say, I'd like to think about how we can apply these principles to working with elders in my community or young people. Or I'd like to think about how we can use some of these principles to create a more inclusive organization. Whatever your passion is. So think about what topic you'd like to discuss with other people about how to actually apply this. Right? Because I love talking. I love, love being here, but what I'm really passionate about is making change. So I want to see something happen out of this workshop. Okay? So in the meantime, I just want to run through quickly some of the other assets that are in our community. One is the built natural environment. That is so obvious here. You guys have so many incredible assets. So oftentimes when I ask this question, to raise this, I ask 3 questions to identify those treasures. One is, when you have a visitor come like me, and you want to show off your community, where do you take me?
Meredith.
Yeah. Meredith took me all over and just showed me the fantastic, natural environment here. She showed me the wonderful built environment, like the Marae, some of the historic buildings. Fantastic. Second question is, where are the bumpy? Where is it that you bump into your friends all the time? Where is it that young people do their bumping? Where do older people do the bumping? What are those key bumping places? Because if you want to start working with people, you need to meet them where they're at. They're in those bumping places. So what are some bumping places here? Yeah, the skateboard park. Fantastic. Yeah, Meredith showed that to me too. What else? Yeah, good. That's great. What else?
Coffee shops.
Coffee shops, for sure.
Oh,
Yeah. Okay, we go on and on. Third one are what are the buried treasures? Those problem properties that could be potential treasures. So I want to share some examples about turning problems into opportunities. Starting to see our neighborhoods in a different way. So this is in Riverina, New South Wales, agricultural area. They recognize that about 20% of their produce is rotting in the fields because the suppliers required them to be a certain size, no blemishes. So perfectly good food was rotting in the fields. So the churches organized and the congregations went out and they do cleaning and they gather up this food and they send thousands and thousands of pounds to the food banks in Sydney every year. Incredible underutilized resource.
Exactly that here in Gisborne.
Is that right?
Drove past a field out at Margaret.
Yeah.
And it was just this field, this huge field, just strewn with thousands and thousands of rock melons. And the only reason they hadn't harvested them was because they had blemish all over the wrong size. And I asked the guy if he could have, he said, look, you can come here and take a truckload if you want. And it was rotting on the ground, and he turned back into the soil.
Great example. I bet there's a potential to do a lot more of that. Yeah. This is in our Finney neighborhood. This was planned as a street. It was houses on either side, but it was never developed because it's too steep. Big problem in the neighborhood. Lots of rodents. Only thing trying to get up with 4-wheel drive vehicles, driving the neighbors totally nuts. They went out and they saw this as an opportunity. They went out and picked some shovels, dug through that heavy hard-pan clay soil by hand, hauled these timbers up the side, carrots, that whole problem hillside, turned that problem property into a community garden. This is under the freeway, Eastlake neighborhood. Huge problems underneath there with drug dealing, with illegal dumping, because it wasn't good for anything except holding up the freeway. But the young people went down there and said, this is a perfect place for something we've always wanted, but haven't been able to find the land for it. A BMX track. And it's always covered from the rain. What a perfect solution. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Doesn't that look like fun? So this is in the White Center neighborhood. This is just south of Seattle, unincorporated King County, and they claim this is the most diverse place in the world. There are people there from all over the world. So their slogan now is White Center. Not so white, not so centered. And they had an old Presbyterian church there with a declining membership, very few members, huge physical plan. And they said, why don't we open up our church to serve the community? The across the street from a school that's a struggling school. So they offer before and after school programs. They offer free breakfast programs. But the church was falling down around them. They didn't have the resources to keep it up. But the community felt so invested in that church that they organized an extreme makeover. And over 3 weekends, 1,000 volunteers got involved. And they totally rebuilt that church. So they took out the rotting wood, the crumbling mortar. They took out the drafty windows, replaced them with brand new windows. This is the old before and after school space. This is afterwards. This is the kitchen before. This is the kitchen afterwards. Local artists donated all these stained glass windows. And they re-landscaped around that whole church. 1,000 volunteers. A fourth aspect is in every community is the local economy. Sometimes we talk about low-income neighborhoods. But even low-income neighborhoods have an economy. It's just a smaller economy. And oftentimes in lower-income communities, what little money is there is flowing out. We call it the leaky bucket model of economic development. John McKnight and Jody Pressman did a survey once in a low-income neighborhood in Chicago and found that if all the money that was going to providers of services to low-income people in that neighborhood had actually gone to the low-income people in that neighborhood, there wouldn't have been any low-income people in that neighborhood. So the idea is, how do we build the economy around the strengths of that community? Right? Too oftentimes the solution is, we're going to give tax breaks to a corporation to come in, but then the profits all leave the community. Or a big box retail, and the money leaves the community. Or a chain store, and the money leaves the community. There's so many studies that show that small businesses from the community, that money grows in the economy, grows the economy. So the idea is, how do we build businesses around the strengths of the community? How do we get those businesses to hire locally? How do we get people to shop locally? How do we get those businesses to reinvest locally? Keep that money circling within the community, within the local economy. So here's some examples. This is Hawksdale, small community in Victoria, rural community. All they had left was a general store. And the town was declining. Kids were afraid they were going to lose the general store. So without asking anybody's permission, they put a pole across the highway to stop all the cars. And they asked the motorists, what would get you to stop in our town? The number one thing they heard was if you had a good toilet when you stopped. They had a really terrible toilet block. But they had a local architect in their community, and they worked with this architect to design and build the very coolest toilet in all of Australia. And now people drive out of their way to go to this small town, either to use the toilet or to be photographed in front of it. So it's greatly revived the local general store. I was driving around Yakadanga, rural Victoria, and I stopped for gas. And I saw the sign that said Yakadanga Community Development Company. So I asked them, what's the story here? They said they were going to lose their service station and their hardware store. And how can you have a rural community without a service station and a hardware store? So the whole community came together, they pooled their money, and they started their own gas station and hardware store. Now they make $100,000 a year in profit that they put back into their community to support their human service programs. All over Canada, communities are starting up local currency. I got to speak to them daily with millions of dollars in Calgary, Alberta. And that's money that's worth exactly the same as Canadian currency, but can only be spent in Calgary. Nobody else recognizes the money. So it keeps the money local. It's a fantastic way to keep the money going in the economy. Here's Toronto dollars. Salt Spring Island is an island near Seattle. Lots of artists live on the island, so they're always creating new currencies all the time. And lots of tourists come, and when they come, they take that money home as a souvenir. But the value stays on the island, so they use all the proceeds to support their local food bank. I live on Vashon now, a small island just off of Seattle. We got lots of farms on the island, kids looking for something to do. So we trained kids. We had kids identify what their dreams were for starting a business. And then we teamed them up with somebody who could serve as their mentor to help them start their business. So this girl started up a t-shirt company. These kids understand technology like nobody else, so they started up a technology support group. That's where I always take my computer when I have problems. They're doing booming business. These kids started up a nonprofit group called Save Our Souls. about repairing skateboards and shoes so that everybody can participate in the skating community. We have wonderful organic farms on Vashon, but in our local schools, they serve terrible, overcooked vegetables out of cans. The kids grow up eating vegetables. Talk to our superintendent of schools and say, could you serve food from the local farms? It'd be a great way to support our local farmers and to have kids eat good food. He said, we can't afford it. It would cost more money than the canned food. So we did a fundraiser to raise money to pay for the difference. Now that program more than pays for itself. Because 3 times as many kids actually sign up for the lunch program because the food's finally edible. And with the economies of scale, they're able to afford the better food. We were tired of the banks taking our money and taking it off the island. So we started up our own credit union. And people moved their money from the banks into our credit union. The credit union was located on Bank Road. We've now renamed it Credit Union Way. A fifth asset is American's local culture and identity. One of my favorite examples. What's special about your place? That's pretty obvious here. It was less obvious in Bowles. Bowles was one of those small towns that people just tried to get through as quickly as possible on their way to Wellington because there was no reason to stop in Bowles. So they tried to think, what's special about our town? And they said, well, they were named after Mr. Bowles, the pioneer. But they said, why don't we take the animal as our mascot? So they put up a large welcome to Bowles sign. And they put Bowles murals all over their town. And then they started using really bad puns. And they started naming every one of their businesses after Bowles. So the medical center became Curable. The police station, yeah. The fire station is extinguishable. The toilets are relievable. The trash cans are responsible. And then they saw how successful Spain was with the running of the Bowls. So they got a bunch of guys together from the men's shed, and they did a gigantic build-a-ball out of plywood, and they have a big Bowls festival. They pull the bowl through the streets of Bowls. It brings all kinds of tourists, brings money back into the economy. Look at all the Bowls businesses. The antique store is called Affordable. I love this one. This is the church. It's called Forgivable. And the bank, of course, is bankable. Well, 3 weeks before I visited Bowles, there was a thief who came in the middle of the night with a forklift and tore that cash machine off the side of the bank and stole all the money. Next day, there's a sign on the side of the bank that said, rob-able. And the publicity brought more people than ever to Bowles. So it's about thinking about what's special about your place, going with your unique identity. And you guys have such an incredible one. You know, first people to see the light. I love that one. That's great. That's really cool. So think about what's special about your place, something to build on. And finally, local agencies have underutilized resources. I talked about how agencies are different than associations. But every agency has underutilized resources. Because, and it's hard to think about now because we have such tight economic times. But you think about it, agencies focus their resources on their mission. To the extent their resources aren't needed to carry out their mission, they go underutilized. A school is an easy example. A school's mission is to educate young people. So when they aren't educating young people, schools are closed. Our schools in Seattle are used about 18% of the time. How many factories can afford to operate their physical plant 18% of the time? So we opened up our school at night for community use. We call it Powerful Schools. Here's our former mayor, Norm Rice, opening up the school. Where we have classrooms, and community members are teaching their skills to other community members for free. We have a very, very multicultural community, so you can go in there and learn any language you want. My wife and daughter took a class together in sign language. There's a computer center where low-income kids are teaching their parents how to use the computer. There's a cafeteria where we have community meals together. There's an auditorium where we have community performances. A gymnasium where we do community recreation. We We tore up the asphalt around the school and put in raised beds for community gardens. Part of the environmental curriculum at the school, a place where people in the community don't have backyards to be garden. Incredible underutilized resource. And you think about it, every agency has underutilized resources. I worked with a group of nonprofits in the Sunshine Coast in Australia. One had a van that was used twice a week. Another had a color printer that was just used some of the time. Another had an accountant who wasn't busy all the time. Another did great outreach in the community. And so they decided they were just going to share their resources across all the nonprofits. And they formed the virtual community warehouse to make use of those. Think about the senior centers, only active when the seniors are active. Think about the youth centers, only active when the young people are active. Think about local council, got incredible purchasing capacity. Do they use that to support small businesses in the community? I don't know. ACO's just going through that now. ACO's having a discussion about socially responsible investment. They're talking about doing all their purchases from within the community. They're talking about making sure everybody who works in the city of ACO gets a living wage. So how do we use our resources to really help support the community's agenda, not just our own mission? How you doing? I've been talking too much. So I got one more story I could share. The other idea would be to go to open space and just have you identify topics you'd like to talk about and form a group around that. Good work, everybody. Great work. So I'd love to stay in touch. You know, if you're looking for resources, I'm just passionate about community. I'm passionate about making change. So if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. This is my email. And when you're successful, send me your stories. I'll share those stories with the rest of the world. And if you're stuck, let me know. We'll try to pump you back up, give you some ideas about what you might do. So thanks very much. It's always the busiest people who end up coming to these things. So I really appreciate your commitment to your communities. I really do. It means a lot to me. It really inspires me. This is tough work, and what keeps me going is there are people like you everywhere in the world who are working hard to make change. And I think collectively, we're going to have a huge impact. The stuff you're doing is happening all around New Zealand. Huge community-led development movement. My colleagues in the inspiring communities, some amazing women, have just written a book called Learning by Doing. We just launched it last week in Wellington. So if you're interested in that, I got a few order forms if you're interested in that. Or contact the council because they're going to order a bunch so they can get it cheaper, I think. Yeah. But anyhow, stay in touch. Thanks so much for your passion for your community. It means a lot. And keep it going, okay?